this brings us to our third primary point. Time blind describes the inability to sense time. Sense of time is deeply rooted in executive functions, and we know that our loved ones and our struggling students are struggling with their executive functions, right? In other videos, I've discussed a little bit about how the executive function center of the brain is the frontal lobe, and there is less mass. Sorry, very insulting. The neurons aren't firing off quite right, and that's why they have unique brains. Okay, so if they have executive function deficits, and we know that the sense of time is deeply rooted in executive functions, is it possible that your struggling student or your loved one is what they call time blind? They cannot sense time. They cannot see it, mentally see it, coming near. Is that possible? Now, I want to say with this, not all people who are struggling students or ADHD or have executive function deficits are guaranteed time blind. Not everybody has that particular deficit, but I have to say, a grand majority of the folks that I've worked with in my practice, they do. And I can tell you from my own experience, I am extremely time blind, so I can tell you all about what that feels like. When you can't feel time going by, it's kind of like a twilight zone. If you're old enough to even know what I'm referring to when I say Twilight Zone, it's kind of like a Twilight Zone experience. You know those moments, and you've actually felt what this feels like. You know those moments, they have phrases. Oh, time flies when you're having fun, like you go to a movie and like, is it even dark outside? You sort of like lose track of time, right? And hence there's the phrase, lose track of time, right? Or the opposite, either time goes by really fast or the opposite, time goes by really slow. It's the 5 minutes before it's go time to be able to end your day, or whatever moments you're waiting in. For me, it's waiting in line. Gosh, time goes by so slow then. Or maybe you're waiting for somebody else who's running late, and that feels like time just sort of feels like it slows down. That is, changes in your sense of time. Now, what people who are time blind experience is that all the time. Almost never time goes by at the actual real life pace that it's actually going by, if that made any sense at all. So it's either throughout the day, time is either squishing or it's stretching. It's either going by super fast. So you go to science class and you really like science class and it's super fun, and then it's over. And then you go to math class and math class is so boring and it's taking forever. So it feels like math class is 3 hours, science class about 10 minutes. That is what you experience and what you sense. So then you can imagine how that might impact other areas of life. And the two areas I really want to talk about and explain is the mental triggering of urgency, and then also the ability to estimate time. So let's do it. So this brings us to that primary point number 4. People who are time blind have a lagging sense of urgency. It just does not automatically trigger for them. So in order to make any deadline or get to places on time, it's nearly essential to have a naturally sparking of a sense of urgency. You've got to get into go mode to be able to get out of the house in time to make it for the bus. And you have to not only just know I need to leave the house at this time to be able to make it to the bus stop, you have to be able to feel it, because your brain and your body have to deliver the right nutrients and hormones and chemicals and biological whatevers to feed feed your system what it needs to get up and go. Now, if you're time blind, your brain does not naturally trigger that sense of urgency. And even though even though the logical side of your brain says, I know this is a big project and it's due in 2 days, the part of your brain in charge of tripping that sense of urgency is just, I don't know, I guess it's not convinced. And it's just not triggering like it's supposed to. Dr. Russell Barkley, my hero, put it so nicely. He describes it as a nearsightedness to time. He says that people who are time blind can't see that deadline or impending doom coming up until it is right on their nose. And then, click, they kick into gear. Oh, now I see it. Now it's clear. Now my sense of urgency has popped up. So, for example, that might be when a kid is running late to get to the bus stop and they hear the bus from inside their house. All of a sudden, they know exactly what they need to do and they're able to jump into gear and do it, and maybe not soon enough and maybe they still miss the bus. But this is that concept of a nearsightedness to time. And doesn't that leave us so frustrated as parents, because you know your kid can do it, but they're just not doing it soon enough? And I suppose what I'm trying to explain is that may be a function on a neurological level rather than a motivational level. Because let me tell you a secret about this. There's something really beautiful about that sudden last minute kick into gear. When it comes to the chaos of crisis, ADHDers are superheroes. So it's a double-edged sword. I admit, I know, but there is something really beautiful about it. ADHDers make amazing firefighters, ER doctors, ER nurses, EMTs, because when the chaos of crisis sets in, we can become laser focused and very clear-minded. And that's a good thing, because everybody else kind of goes scattered and panics, right? In the chaos of crisis. And that could be one of the reasons why you feel like you have to get into a nuclear knockdown, drag out fight with your child before they will kick it into gear. And I know that really looks like defiance and opposition, and they're just not going to do it unless you drive yourself crazy. I know on the surface that's what it looks like, but it could be this issue with time blindness. Time blindness leads to a lagging sense of urgency. It just doesn't turn on naturally. It doesn't turn on automatically. And then when you don't have a sense of urgency, even if you want to have a sense of urgency, the get up and go is just not there. But then you introduce crisis to the situation and the brain suddenly turns on. And that can be, kind of a cycle we can get into, where we get into the big blowout fights in the morning just to get our kid out of the door, and then we feel miserable for the rest of the day. And I am here to tell you there is another way. I promise. Stay with me. Okay, and then now back to the other thing that is not automatically triggering, or is not automatically functioning, I should say, is that ability to estimate time. Now, when you sit down with your kiddos and you see their homework assignment and it only has, maybe there's just 2 problems left, and the child argues with you for an hour and a half and acts like you're, asking them to dig a ditch or something, and you're just driving yourself crazy because it's only two problems, just do it. It should only take you 5 minutes, and we've been here for an hour and a half, right? That is a classic example of not being able to estimate time accurately. We have to estimate time as people who are time blind. We have to estimate time based on what it feels like. And if those problems were difficult, or math felt like it took 3 hours that day, then those two problems feel like they're going to take a really long time, and there's going to be a major resistance, and there's not going to be the sense of urgency, and then the focus goes away and motivation, and there's all kinds of things linked to these things, right?